Alrighty, welcome to my website. My name is Jess, and the super fun site I'm covering is the Navy Air Engineering Center, NAEC, in Lakehurst, New Jersey. So here we have a map of the site. As you can see, it's in the middle of some major roadways. We are east of Route 206, west of Route 9, north of Route 70, and south of 195. So the first part of this project addresses the main question, what is CERCLA? CERCLA is the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, which was enacted in 1980 to address hazardous waste sites such as Love Canal and Times Beach. It authorizes the EPA to clean up contaminated sites and hold responsible parties liable, while also creating a trust fund to finance cleanups when polluters cannot be identified. CERCLA provides two types of responses: short-term removals, which deal with immediate threats like chemical spills or leaking drums, and long-term remedial actions, which focus on permanent solutions. Right? Long-term remedies are limited to sites on the National Priority List, NPL, ensuring resources target the nation's most dangerous contamination problems. All right, so then here we just have a little bit of a video on what Superfund sites are, and then some history. The Love Canal disaster was in Niagara Falls, New York, and it was one of the most significant catalysts for the passage of CERCLA. In the late 1970s, residents discovered that their neighborhood had built on top of a former chemical waste dump containing more than 21,000 tons of toxic materials buried by Hooker Chemical Company. Leaking drums and contaminated groundwater released hazardous chemicals into basements, yards, and nearby schools, causing widespread health issues such as miscarriages, birth defects, and cancers. The situation received national media coverage and led President Carter to declare a federal emergency in 1978. This was the first time such a declaration had been made for a man-made environmental disaster. Love Canal highlighted the absence of legal and financial framework for cleaning up abandoned hazardous waste sites and holding polluters accountable, making it a driving force behind Congress passing CERCLA. In addition to this, the crisis in Times Beach, Missouri, further emphasized the urgent need for a national hazardous waste response program. In the early 1970s, the town's roads were sprayed with waste oil for dust control, later discovered to be contaminated with dioxin, one of the most toxic chemicals known. The contamination came to light after animal deaths, soil testing, and human health concerns that prompted federal investigation. By 1982, EPA determined that the dioxin levels posed an unacceptable risk, and in 1983, the government ordered the permanent evacuation and buyout of the entire town. The Times Beach disaster illustrated the severe consequences of improper waste disposal and the inability of existing laws to deal with legacy contamination and abandoned sites. Right, so here is a picture of the two schools that were built on the Love Canal property, as well as the flooding that occurred in Times Beach. Okay, so the CERCLA process has 5 main phases of remediation. Following the initial assessment and site inspection are remedial investigation feasibility studies, remedy selection, remedial design, remedial action, and operation and maintenance. These phases work together to identify contamination, determine the best cleanup method, implement the cleanup, and then monitor its long-term effectiveness. So here we have the 5 phases and just kind of the flow chart of how it occurs. CERCLA over the years has had many amendments and other acts that act jointly with it. Okay, so now we're just going to go to the site overview. Naval Air Engineering Center was listed July 22nd of 1989 on the NPL list with a risk assessment score of 50.53. A score of 28.5 or higher is the primary criteria for a site to be considered for the NPL. All right, the Lakehurst site is located in Ocean County in southern New Jersey on grounds of what today is Naval Support Activity Lakehurst Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst. It's roughly 25 to 40 miles southeast of Trenton and inland from the Jersey Shore. The Superfund complex covers several thousand acres and consists of multiple operable units and dozens of potentially contaminated areas that include former landfills, open pits, maintenance areas, fuel handling areas, lagoons, and drainage ditches. Maps and aerial photos show the base boundary, runway orientation, and distribution of operable units across the facility. As operations grew, so did the use of solvents, fuels, paints, lubricants, and firefighting foams. Many wastes were disposed of on-site through practices common in the mid-20th century, including open burning, on-site landfilling, and discharge of processed waters into soil and surface water. By the 1980s, environmental assessments and preliminary investigations revealed widespread contamination of soil, groundwater, and sediment across dozens of areas at the base. As a result, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, placed NAEC Lakehurst on the national priorities list under CERCLA. Since listing, the site has undergone multiple phases of investigation and cleanup. Several records of decision were assigned to address different operable units, while short-term removal actions were conducted to excavate contaminated soils, remove drums, and secure landfills. Long-term remedies have included soil excavation, pump and treat systems for groundwater plumes, landfill caps, and in some cases, natural attenuation where active treatment was not feasible due to sensitive wetlands or ecological habitats. Below goes in depth of the site discovery and pollutants discovered. Okay, so here we have all the different pollutants that they had discovered here on the site. All right. Right, so the Navy, using contract environmental firms, performed the remedial investigations and feasibility studies with EPA Region 2 oversight. RODs for specific operable units were issued in the 1990s. Summaries show detailed characterization work, sampling of wells, soils, and sediments, and selection of excavation and treatment alternatives for sediment and source areas. Right, here is some sampling, some key findings from the feasibility study. At the operable unit for Site 28 in groundwater, ROD noted that the decision was based on the RI report, endangerment assessment, and focused feasibility study for Site 28. Summary document for Lakehurst lists 6 groundwater remedial alternatives for Area K, Sites 4 and 8, compares costs, implementation timeframes, monitoring durations, construction operation. And then the feasibility study document of July 1996 had evaluated even more alternatives, such as source removal plus groundwater pump and treat, soil excavation, hydraulic control, monitored natural attenuation. Through the excerpt summary document only lists a subset of this. The primary contaminants of concern of Lakehurst include volatile organic compounds, VOCs, such as trichloroethylene, TCE, and perchloroethylene, PCE, petroleum hydrocarbons, and heavy metals found in soil, sediment, and groundwater. These pollutants primarily resulted from decades of military activities, including aircraft maintenance, fuel storage, and waste disposal. All right. To manage the extensive contamination, the site was divided into multiple OUs, each governed by a record decision outlining the selective cleanup remedy. The site has had 5-year reviews, and subsequent 5-year reviews are available in the administrative record. These reviews list recommended follow-ups and document remedy protectiveness determinations. The remediation of Naval Air Engineering Station Lakehurst Superfund site is primarily funded through the U.S. Department of Defense, through the U.S. Navy, as the site remains an active military installation. And here we have a general timeline of the site's remediation progress. So starting in the 1920s to 70s when it was used, all the way up until present day when we're doing the 5-year reviews. Much of Lakehurst remains an active military testing, maintenance, and training installation. Portions of the base that have been remediated are under base control and in some cases used for training operations or retained as open, low-use parcels to minimize exposure risks. Lakehurst has partnered with Balfour Beatty Communities to offer military families housing. Some of these homes are on base as well as off base. These homes are advertised to active military duty family looking for houses at the base or qualified military retiree, civilians, or a member of the general public. These homes here receive well water owned by the military base that is tested monthly for contaminants. Right, so base is right here in the gray area, as well as some of the neighborhood is pretty much right connected to it. Unfortunately, due to the government shutdown, an interview with the site manager was unavailable. During shutdowns, the EPA maintains a small staff to handle emergencies where there's imminent risk to public health or the environment. These limited responses focus on urgent issues such as toxic spills, contaminated drinking water, or fires, and explosions at hazardous waste sites. However, non-emergency activities like long-term site investigations, feasibility studies, and progress reporting typically stop entirely. All right, and then this last tab here is my references. And that is all. Thank you.